Hello and welcome to BikeWale, and we've finally ridden the Triumph Scrambler 400X, and after riding it we've drawn two broad conclusions. One, this is a far more versatile motorcycle than its twin, the Speed 400, for not a lot more money. And two, it is a very worthy alternative to the likes of the KTM 390 Adventure and the Himalayan 411. Why and how? Well, that's what we're going to explain in the course of this video, so stick around. Now, in terms of design, the Scrambler looks very much like the Speed 400, and that's no bad thing because the Speed itself is a beautiful looking motorcycle and probably one of the biggest reasons why one should get one. Now, the same traditional British thumper elements that we've seen on the Speed continue on the Scrambler as well. You've got this round headlamp, the beautiful looking teardrop tank, and minimalism in terms of bodywork when it comes to side paneling as well as bodywork for the rear. And then when you take a step closer, you find the attention to detail, be it around the exhaust, the engine casing, or even around the panels, is very well done. And so it draws second glances from people and makes you very good about your purchase or having the bike with you. More importantly, the Scrambler addresses the Speed's one big Achilles heel: lack of road presence. The Scrambler, owing to its taller stance, the bigger front wheel, the wider handlebar and knuckle guards it comes with as standard, give it a beefier, bigger road presence. Now, it might not be obvious at first glance, but apart from running different wheels, the Scrambler has a different chassis to the Speed, as well as giving it a significantly longer wheelbase compared to the Speed. Other changes include different foot pegs, a split seat and a more purposeful looking exhaust. Speaking of cycle parts, what's really changed in the chassis is the neck area of the mainframe, which is now longer, but otherwise the chassis still remains a tubular one with a bolt-on subframe. And the suspension, it's still got USD forks up front and a monoshock at the back, but now there is more travel because it's a Scrambler and there is some amount of off-roading that Triumph feels its owners would subject the motorcycle to. Now, with that long neck and long travel, what Triumph has also done is that they have changed the geometry of the front suspension. It's steeper now, and what you would want in a motorcycle that you take off-road is more trail, and for that this is slightly offset at the axle, and that would lend a good balance of response plus stability, especially when it hits rocks and bumps and things like that. The travel is 150 mm. It's not as much as we've seen in the 390 ADV or even on the Himalayan, but it is more than the street, and with the increased ground clearance around 195 mm, places like this you will be able to take it without worrying about hitting its sump. Like we said, 19-inch front wheel, but now it runs narrower tires at the front, 100 section. Similarly at the back, it's still a 17-inch rear, but the tire section is now 140. Other changes, mechanically, you've got a bigger disc brake at the front, 320 mm, while the rear disc brake remains the same. So that's what wraps up the cycle parts, but of course, nothing really has changed on the engine. The engine is the same 399cc single-cylinder liquid-cooled engine from the Speed 400. It has been worked on to produce a higher and flatter torque curve than its over-square bore and stroke ratio might suggest. It is also in the same state of tune as the Speed. No changes have been made to the gearbox either, with the 6-speed unit running the exact same ratios that we have seen on the Speed. What has changed, however, is the front sprocket on the Scrambler is now a 14-teeth unit instead of a 15-teeth one on the Speed, and this has resulted in a shorter final drive, and that means stronger drive in lower gears. As far as features go, there's nothing extraordinary on offer. One gets part analog, part digital instrumentation with readouts for 2 trips, range, RPM, selected gear, fuel level and time. One can also access the menu through the instrumentation to turn off both traction control and the ABS at the rear wheel. It is, however, not the most intuitive of menus, and it can feel a tad tedious at times. Now, when it comes to riding, two things really stand out about the Scrambler 400X. One is that it is comfortable, and two, it is easy. As a result, if you're staring at peak hour traffic on your way back home, you'll have no problems reaching for the Scrambler keys. The other bit is that if you want to head onto a state highway or an interior road that you've never heard about, never been on, and you have no idea what the road surface is like, with the Scrambler, you don't really need to worry, because the way the suspension's set up and the way the seat is and your seating ergos, everything, it just makes for a very comfortable motorcycle to take on bad roads, poor roads, and that makes it both easy and comfortable to live with. What's more, when you take it on a twisty road, the larger front wheel doesn't get in the way. The 400X flows uninterrupted through corners, and it has a sense of balance and predictability which instills loads of confidence in the rider. It responds with alertness and accuracy to steering inputs. It rarely feels soft or wallowy, no matter how bumpy the corner. And it never feels lazy through quick direction changes. It's a motorcycle you instantly connect with and feel at home on. So much so that you can't really go wrong with it. Adding to the motorcycle's comfort, of course, is the ergonomics of the Scrambler. So you've got a seat height first to begin with, which is at 835 mm, and that might seem high. And I'm 5'8", but in dirt boots, let's say I get an inch and a half more, so 5'9" and a half, maybe 5'10". And for me, it's no problem when I get on the bike. One, because of my weight, the rear suspension settles down, and also it's got a pretty narrow waist, so it's easy to put both feet. I can put both of my feet firmly on the ground. So the seat height might seem daunting, but in reality, when you get on the bike, when you use it, it's not so. And then, of course, seating ergos. Your foot pegs are neutrally positioned. You've got a really wide handlebar, and it's not really up close to the seat, so there's plenty of room here, so it feels like a bigger bike. And overall, you're getting seating ergos that are comfortable to sit on, almost like a chair, so you can spend long hours in it, whether you're commuting or whether you're taking on the highways. And then, of course, because it's a Scrambler, we want to take a look at the standing ergos as well. It's easy to get on the foot pegs because of its positioning, and then it's also very easy to grip both the tank as well as the heel plate. So you can really grab it with your feet quite well, with your ankles, and so it's very easy to move around, and you never really are holding onto the handlebar or leaning on them. So it makes for a good motorcycle to ride sitting down as well as standing up, and that's what you'd want in a Scrambler. Since it has a Scrambler in its name, we had to have a go off-road as well. And true to its specs, the 400X is very happy handling the hard-packed stuff. There's decent travel, the suspension handles the beating off-road without complaint, the bike doesn't feel heavy or unmanageable, and the more you ride it, the more you realize it doesn't do anything funny, which in turn, of course, builds the confidence to go faster and take on more difficult trails. But yes, it needs a little more off-road focused rubber to enjoy it thoroughly. Like we said, you cannot go wrong with the Scrambler. But let's tie in what we said at the start of the video, that this is a more versatile motorcycle than its twin, the Speed 400. And that's because with its bigger wheel, the front wheel, and its longer travel suspension, its more comfortable seating ergos, and very sorted standing up ergos, it's a motorcycle that can do everything that Speed can, then some more. And if I were in the market to buy a motorcycle that's nice to ride, easy to ride, which has let's say retro neo styling, then I would pick the Scrambler over the Speed, and I would happily pay the 30,000 rupee premium, because this just offers more or different kind of motorcycling experience which the Speed cannot. And now about the Scrambler being a worthy alternative to the likes of the 390 Adventure and the Himalayan 411. Well, let's take the KTM first, and this is cheaper than the KTM and you get more stuff than you get on the Adventure if you look at the X version. Of course, the X has a little more suspension travel, but if you're looking for a motorcycle to tour on, to commute on, and to take on, hard-packed dirt trails, then this does it as well as the 390, and you have a motorcycle that looks nicer, a motorcycle that has finer details, and a motorcycle where you save money. Now, talking about the Himalayan, of course Himalayan is less expensive, but it is heavier, it doesn't have as much performance on tap, and now with this engine, whatever changes they've made with the bigger airbox and all that, you have good amount of torque in the mid and it stays flat. So there is a lot more accessibility when you're riding off-road, which was the Himalayan's trump card, if you will. So the Scrambler works better than the Himalayan on-road, and of course Himalayan still will be the motorcycle to go for if you're going for the really difficult stuff off-road. But for most of us, Aam Janta, who wants to just get on and experience some trails, I still think this is worth that extra money that you would pay over the Himalayan 411 because of the versatility that it brings in motorcycle experience, riding and ownership.